Hello everyone, thank you for watching my first video. If you enjoy it, please make sure to like and subscribe for more videos, and let's get into it. Frederick II was born December 24th, 1194 to the second son of Frederick Barbarossa, Henry VI, who reigned as Holy Roman Emperor from 1191 to 1197. Although Henry had been crowned emperor, his family's power base of the Duchy of Swabia was in the hands of his relatives. However, through a clever marriage policy, Henry VI married the heiress of the Kingdom of Sicily, Princess Constance Hauteville, the daughter of King Roger II of Sicily. The Hautevilles were the leading Norman adventurers who had come into Sicily in the 11th century to gain wealth through acting as mercenaries to the Lombard princes against other Lombards or against the Byzantines, who still held land in the very south of Italy. They won incredible victories and, against all the odds, set up several states of their own, which soon morphed into the Kingdom of Sicily. Because the Hautevilles had played such an important role in conquering and unifying Sicily, several branches of the family controlled their own counties or principalities within the kingdom. Several Hauteville claimants to the throne of Sicily emerged: Tancred Hauteville, Count of Lech, and Roger, Count of Andria. Tancred became the leading candidate and acquired support from most of the kingdom's nobility thanks to rumors spreading against Roger of Andria. Henry VI was originally pushed back after losing the siege of Naples in 1191, pursuing his wife's claim to Sicily. He faced opposition from some of his vassals, especially in the Low Countries, but Henry VI got very lucky, and the Duke of Austria agreed to hand over King Richard of England, who he had recently captured while he was journeying back from the Holy Land. Richard had been a strong supporter of Tancred of Lech, and in addition to an enormous ransom, Henry VI demanded that Richard become his vassal. Furthermore, Tancred died, leaving an underage son to defend his claims in Sicily. Henry VI quickly descended on Sicily a second time, with many cities allowing him to in without a fight. He won the siege of Naples in 1194, and Tancred's son knew he had lost the war for the kingdom, so he tried to negotiate to hold on to the county of Lech and the principality of Capua. However, these were taken from him, and he was imprisoned until his death. Just 3 years later he died, possibly poisoned, and Frederick was his successor, that is, Henry VI. Frederick had already been crowned King of the Romans in 1196, while his father lived. In 1198, upon hearing of his father's death, Frederick was crowned King of Sicily in Palermo at just 3 years old. The Pope was his guardian after his mother's death, followed by the German ministerialist Marquard von Anweiler, in partnership with the Duke of Swabia Philip, his uncle, who was also King of Germany at the time. His second regent was William of Caperone, a German captain of Palermo. His final regent was the Chancellor of Sicily, Bishop Walter of Palearia. The Holy Roman Empire was not a hereditary monarchy. Instead, seven prince-electors voted for who would be the emperor: the archbishops of Cologne, Mainz, and Trier, the King of Bohemia, the Count Palatine of the Rhine, the Duke of Saxony, and the Margrave of Brandenburg. In 1209, after King Philip of Swabia's death, Otto IV Welf of Brunswick was elected emperor. The Welfs were a very powerful noble family, originally Dukes of Saxony, who had rivaled the power of the Hohenstaufens in the 12th century and had fought them before, losing their Duchy of Saxony just 29 years earlier. Despite Frederick's father's early attempts to make him the heir to the empire, the reality was that he was a minor and was in no position to take over the empire. However, by 1208, he was no longer a minor. When Otto was elected, he began to favor the nobles of the Kingdom of Sicily, who did not want to lose the autonomy they had held when Frederick was a minor. Frederick married Constance of Aragon, a daughter of the old King of Aragon, in 1209, securing an alliance. At the Diet of Nuremberg in 1211, Frederick was elected while absent by a rebellious faction against Otto. At this time, the Pope did not support Otto and had him excommunicated. Furthermore, he backed Frederick II as the new emperor in exchange for a promise that Frederick would keep the Kingdom of Sicily separate from the empire. Frederick journeyed north, retaking the Duchy of Swabia, and in 1212 he was crowned king in Mainz, although northern Germany still remained under the influence of Otto. In 1214, Otto lost the important Battle of Bouvines to the French, which completely shattered his reputation and forced him to withdraw to his lands in northern Germany and renounce the imperial title. In 1215, Frederick was officially elected Holy Roman Emperor and crowned in Aachen in traditional coronation city by one of the archbishop electors. In 1218, he helped King Philip of France put down a feudal succession war for the county of Champagne by attacking his vassal, the Duke of Lorraine, who was supporting the claimant Error de Brienne-Raimrup. When he was elected King of Romans, he had promised to go on crusade. During the Fifth Crusade, he sent forces under the Duke of Bavaria, who helped capture Dalmatia, but the Crusaders refused to accept an offer of returning Dalmatia in exchange for Jerusalem, because they were expecting Frederick to fulfill his vow to go on crusade, which he failed to do at the time. Thanks to Frederick's reluctance, the crusade failed. In 1225, Frederick promised to go on crusade by 1228, and he tried to use this as an excuse to assert control of Lombardy by holding a diet there. However, this was not successful, and the Pope had to mediate between the communes of Lombardy and Frederick. In 1225, Frederick also married Isabel II of Jerusalem, heiress of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. And finally, in 1227, Frederick set sail for the Holy Land, but he turned back due to illness and was excommunicated by the Pope. In 1228, he finally went on crusade, but he was excommunicated a second time because as one who had been excommunicated, he was technically not allowed to go on crusade. Frederick negotiated with the Ayyubid Sultan and was able to secure Jerusalem and the coast in exchange for Jerusalem to no longer be further fortified, and the Muslim mosque was to remain in Muslim hands. This was quite an achievement, but many saw this as a betrayal to the Kingdom of Jerusalem because the terms were less than favorable. Because there was so much discontent among the nobility of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, the result was the so-called War of the Lombards between Frederick's representatives and the established nobility, which raged from 1228 to 1243. The Ibelins, who led the opposition, were successful in the war. In the 1230s, Frederick II's viceroy was forced to leave the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and he seems to have lost control from then on. While he was away on crusade, the Pope decided to confiscate his lands because he had caused the failure of the Fifth Crusade and had now gone on crusade without permission. War was inevitable when Frederick's regent Reinald von Urslingen invaded Spoleto and Ancona, which were in papal hands at the time. The Pope enlisted help from all Christendom, including England, Germany, Sweden, Spain, but mostly from the Papal States itself. He even appealed to the German aristocracy to try to renounce Frederick II, but they were not swayed. The Brienne noble family also supported the war because John of Brienne, who had previously been king of Jerusalem, but had been ousted by Frederick II, wanted to take revenge on him. Additionally, his relative Walter of Brienne had claims to the county of Lech. The war was known as the War of the Keys because the insignia which the papal forces wore. The Pope collected a special tithe from most Christian countries to fund this war. Despite Reinald's early success, he was eventually pushed back to Sulmona by papal forces. The papal forces advanced into northwestern Sicily, taking many fortresses along the way. Their plan was to take all of the ports in Sicily so that if Frederick landed, he would immediately be captured. However, they did not move fast enough, and most of the Sicilian nobility remained loyal to Frederick II. In 1229, Frederick landed in Brindisi and proceeded to reconquer his territories, which the Pope had taken, but he did not advance into papal territory. Instead, he negotiated with the Pope, and after long negotiations, the war was over and Frederick's excommunication was lifted. Frederick's son, Henry VII, was the reigning Duke of Swabia and also had been crowned King of Germany, and was effectively ruling in Frederick's name in Germany. However, he was young and had been forced to accept the Statutum in Favorum Principum in 1231, which gave great powers to the princes of the realm and deprived the emperor of much power. For example, it gave the princes the right to mint their own money, and it also made it so that their approval was required for legislation change. Frederick favored this because it meant more stable Germany, which would effectively govern itself, leaving him to focus on Sicily. However, Henry VII was unhappy with it because it took away much of his power in Germany. Frederick had his son excommunicated by the Pope and proceeded to cross north of the Alps and have his son imprisoned before Henry's attempt at a revolt could even get started. Frederick planned to reassert his control over Lombardy, but he had to crush a rebellion by the Duke of Austria. He had his younger son Conrad crowned King of the Romans in Vienna in 1237. After failed negotiations with the Lombard League, Frederick invaded Verona and won the decisive Battle of Cortanova in 1237. He celebrated the battle with a triumph in Cremona in the style of the ancient Romans. Frederick rejected pleas for peace in exchange for large amounts of money. He wanted to control the Lombard cities. However, in 1238, he was forced to leave the siege of Brescia due to the strength of his enemies. In 1239, Frederick was again excommunicated by the Pope, who did not want Frederick to expand his power further in Italy. As a response, he made his bastard son Enzo the imperial vicar of northern Italy, who proceeded to annex the Duchy of Spoleto and the March of Ancona, which were papal territories. Frederick moved towards Rome and was getting ready to take it by siege, but had to return to Sicily, where a papal legate was inciting rebellion against him. Frederick headed north and took the cities of Ravenna and Faenza. Peace negotiations began after this point, and the Pope called for a general council of all the major clergymen of Christendom, but this collapsed when Frederick attacked a Genoese fleet carrying all the papal prelates at the Battle of Giglio in 1241. Frederick again marched to besiege Rome, but just as he was going to, the Pope died, and Frederick withdrew his troops in order to show that he had been fighting against the now dead Pope and not the Roman Church. He freed 2 cardinals he had captured at Giglio and traveled to Sicily to await the election of a new Pope. It was around this time that the Mongols were invading Hungary. Although the King of Hungary requested help from Frederick, he did not march to the king's aid because the King of Hungary had supported the Pope in previous struggles against Frederick. Instead, Frederick ordered all his vassals to strengthen their defenses and gather large numbers of crossbowmen and stores of food. Frederick contemplated a crusade against the Mongols, but this never happened because the Mongols were not successful at attacking the empire. In 1243, Pope Innocent IV was elected. Before he was elected, his name was Sinibaldo Fieschi, a son of the Count of Lavagna, of whom some of Frederick's own followers were related to. So at first, Frederick was happy with the new pope. Viterbo, a papal city which was occupied by Frederick, rebelled against him and returned to the papal cardinal of Viterbo. Frederick besieged Viterbo, and the pope agreed to hand it over, but as soon as Frederick left, the cardinal of Viterbo killed his garrison. The pope left to go to Lyon, an important central city, where the pope could hold a council, where he excommunicated Frederick in 1245. The pope and the cardinal began a propaganda war against Frederick, calling him a heretic who kept a harem of eunuchs, and declared himself deposed as emperor. The pope backed the anti-king Henrik Rasp Landgrave of Thuringia, against Frederick, and set into motion a plot to kill Frederick using one of his friends, Orlando de Rossi. However, a vassal of Frederick's, the Count of Caserta, discovered the plot, and the assassins were burnt alive. Frederick's son Conrad was defeated by the Landgrave in 1246 in a battle near Frankfurt thanks to the Pope's money. However, Frederick strengthened his position in Germany by acquiring the Duchy of Austria, whose last duke had died without an heir. In 1247, Henrik Rass died and was succeeded as anti-king by the Count of Holland. Frederick held a diet at Terni where he made his relatives imperial vicars of different parts of his domain. However, the city of Parma expelled Frederick's representatives and declared their support for the Pope. His son Enzo, along with the ruler of Verona, Ezzelina III de Romano, besieged the city awaiting help from Frederick. However, the siege camp was assaulted and the imperial army were routed in 1248, losing the royal treasury, which was a fatal blow. Frederick built an army back, but he lost the provinces of Romagna, the March of Ancona, and the Duchy of Spoleto. In 1249, Frederick fired his chief advisor, Pier del Vigni, who he imprisoned on charges of embezzlement. Later, in 1249, his son Enzo was captured by the city of Bologna at the Battle of Fossalta. He was held in the Palace of Bologna until his death in 1272. The empire lost Como and Medina, but regained Ravenna. An army sent to invade Sicily under the Cardinal of Viterbo was defeated at the Battle of Cingoli in 1250, and the troublesome cardinal was finally killed. The imperial army reconquered Romagna, Spoleto, and Ancona, and Frederick's son Conrad won some battles against the anti-king in Germany. However, Frederick fell ill and died in the habit of a Cistercian monk in 1250 at the Castel Fiorentino. Frederick's entire career was marked by his rivalry with the papacy, which stemmed from his broken crusader vows, but was truly fueled by the papacy's desire to eliminate imperial power in Italy, which threatened the state of the church. Although he achieved some victories, he was never able to capitalize on them fully, and died before he could settle his quarrel with the papacy. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and tune in for more videos.